Well, we are thrilled to have Tim Day on the show today. I get to interview Tim from his home. And Tim is a pastor, has been a pastor. He's a leader in Christian ministry across Canada. He's an author and speaker, and we can learn so much from Tim. Thank you for being with us, Tim. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Tim, before we jump into the topic at hand, which I'm excited to talk about, the impact of Christian charities in Canada, can you tell us a little bit about your faith story?
Yeah, glad to be with you and appreciate this opportunity. I grew up in Shirkston in Ontario, a small little rural village. I say I grew up on Shirkston Road where the Shirks live. My family kind of lived a very simple kind of rural life, went to the church up the road. My dad was in business and did some variety of things, but was always heavily involved in the church. And he ultimately went into ministry when I was younger. And from that, when I was young, like many young Christian kids, my first commitment to Christ was when I was at a camp and was 8 years old. But then later in life, had to do my own deeper wrestling and critical, process of owning that at a deeper level. That's its own story, but ultimately did a degree in the U.S. and then did my master's at Tyndale Seminary in Toronto, and have done things like youth pastoring, church planting, led the Meeting House, which is a multi-site church for 14 years, from a high school to 15 locations, and I've had really an amazing experience of following God.
Well, Tim, I just want to first of all say thank you for your ministry in Canada. People will know you after this interview, hopefully, to know that there are people like you who just really care about the church in Canada and what's happening here. And I want to just talk about this. You've done many things. One thing you're really good at is listening, and you've gone across the nation and you've listened to leaders and you've sat in many conversations. You do a lot of consulting and helping churches and ministries. Would you tell us, in this time, especially COVID-19, it's brought out a lot of, how's the church doing? We hear bad news about the church. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of too much of, oh, well, the church is not growing. We need some good news, Tim. And I know that you have done some studies that there's actually good news for the church in Canada. Tell us about Waybase Network, this waybase.com platform, and what is its purpose? What have you learned?
Okay, you asked two great questions there, and I'll try to get both of them real quickly. Waybase is a platform that's in development, and there's a whole new version of it coming out this fall, Waybase 2.0. And it's organizing all of the data of the church and all of public data on cities, organizing in a way so that Christian leaders, when they go out to do the mission of the church, can really know what's going on in their area, be able to partner where it makes sense, and particularly zero in on specific efforts that really we do best together versus one-on-one, in an individual way. And particularly COVID has highlighted this, that there are specific needs in the city that the church is best positioned to care for in Jesus' name as a part of our testimony. There's also things that we do providing kind of evangelism, discipleship opportunities that we tend to do collectively, like creating campus groups for university students, these types of things, alpha campaigns for cities or different types of campaigns. And these all need the opportunity for people to know who's in their city, other ministries they might want to partner with, and how do we do this better together. So Waybase and the network that's growing around that are a group of young millennial entrepreneurial kingdom leaders building this for the future of the church so that we can be more effective. So that's what Waybase is, and I'm helping to support that team and get that message out. Now, you also asked about what's the state of the church right now. And
Yeah.
I would say this, the church is filled with resilient, creative leaders because of how Jesus attracts. Jesus attracts that kind of leader. He attracts compassionate leaders. He attracts caring leaders because of his message of grace and healing and reconciliation. But he also attracts entrepreneurial leaders. And so, people say, "Well, we're really struggling." Actually, the church is adapting very rapidly in terms of quickly making changes and being willing to make changes. And so even though we're going to go through a dip like everybody else, we're not unique we're not going to be spared the dip that everybody's going through financially or some of those challenges. I see the church is starting to pivot, and a lot of the leaders that I'm talking to are working hard at adapting creatively. We're being launched like 5 years into the future, our own future. And so that's a bit of a jump, but we'll catch up.
Well, I just love what you're doing in the sense of we're better together. And I think in Canada, there is this, as I've been involved in a lot of ministries like you, I see that ministries try to sort of do their own thing. We don't know each other, but we're now have a generation, I think, that wants to work together. And can you tell us what you've learned about the power of the church and especially Christian charities, not just a local church, but Christian charities, like working together? What is the impact of that? Do we hold anything different than any other charity in Canada?
The Christian church is not aware of how incredibly valuable it is to the well-being of Canada. It's kind of like I use this illustration. Bill Gates was one time, somebody took a picture of him standing in line at a hamburger joint getting a hamburger, and he just looked like an average guy sitting there talking. And I said, a lot of times the church is kind of like that. We just feel like kind of average people are standing in line, we're doing our thing. We don't realize we're the people who change the world because we're not connected and we don't have a way of getting that feedback loop. Bill Gates does, we don't. And so, the Church of Canada has over 30,000 ministries. We have more churches than gas stations. In terms of our size, if you want to compare it, we're a good comparison to all of the social services provided by federal and provincial governments. We're like a shadow government. The thing that's different about us is we use volunteers. And so the money that we have, which is substantial, it adds up to about $35 billion in services provided. We use volunteers, so we have this multiplying effect. And we also offer services in multiple languages. So as we have this wildly culturally diverse background, we just naturally do this. We have all kinds of services, and then these services are all networking ministries where we kind of like refer things just naturally out of our relationships because we know people. So I had one of the city councilors when we were doing a tour across Canada, was talking to one of the members of the Toronto City Council, and they said everybody knows, or they knew, that if someone settles from Canada, comes in as a refugee or asylum seeker, and they go through a normal government program, after a year, 10% will have a job. But if they go through a Christian program, 90% will have a job.
Wow.
And they said, we have to find a way to work with you more effectively. And I'm like, I know why they have a job, because somebody passed the word around and somebody in their church hired them, right?
Right.
Or found a friend that would hire them. We're
Yeah.
a massive, compassionate, networked community. Now, the thing that we do is we are within our own networks. So we know our own group. So the opportunity, and this is what this young team that I'm supporting is doing, is like, if we connect the networks,
Yeah.
right? We have a way, even if we improve by 10%, we'll be unlocking tens of millions of dollars of impact to serve Jesus' mission in Canada. So anyways, that's the vision of Waybase. That's the potential of the church.
Well, that is powerful to think. And here's the lesson that I'm hearing even for our viewers. Like, we as the church can't just stay in our own huddles or the groups that if we would truly work together. I mean, Jesus said the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Isn't that the truth? And we have a supernatural power working amongst us. So, the good news of the church in Canada is let's work together. Let's break down some of these barriers. Tim, I thank you for what you're doing. How can people find you, Tim, or get connected to waybase.com? Just go right there.
Go to waybase.com. We did a recent national survey with a whole host of partners, also an interview with one of the chief medical officers of health on how the church can reopen safely in COVID. So you can check out some of the resources there, start to look around. But by this fall, there's going to be a new version of it released as a resource to the church, and encourage people to check it out.
Wow, so good, Tim. Thank you for your work again. Canada, let's get together. Let's work together, and especially in these crucial times, because the good news can spread to every home, to everyone in Canada, if we will work together. Tim, I thank you so much for being with us. God bless your ministry and the way you're empowering and enabling so many of us across Canada. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Lori.